I think that's just the first step in terms of how the hierarchies could get fixed forever, right? I think people don't mind having inequality as long as they see like a gradient of progress. Countries that are rich, countries that have more GPUs, they make better intelligence, and that cycle just keeps on concentrating, and the rest of the world simply just falls behind. AI is automation of intellectual labor, and if you can afford to have AI just because you have more money, more capital, then I think that the linkage between if I work hard, I'll be better off just
Right.
breaks off. But there are a lot of things that you need access to the top surgeon. You'll be outbid by people who have Anthropic shares. Is that fair? Should that be the case? And that's why I feel things where there is less confounding factors, which is like a closed system. Math is like that, games are like that, software is like that. It compiles, doesn't compile. They're getting automated first.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the PostAGI podcast. I'm your host, Sreeram Kannan. Today we have a special guest, Paras Chopra of Lossfunk. Welcome to the show, Paras.
Thanks for having me, Sriram.
Amazing. As I was preparing for the show, like one of the things I went through your blog, Inverted Passion, and the tagline of the blog was know what's true and do what's right. I absolutely loved this. Can you say a little bit more about why you chose this as the tagline and what it speaks to?
It's sort of like a north star in terms of what I consider as an ideal behavior.
Hmm.
It's sort of like all of us are just deeply embedded in our experiences that sort of cause us to have different kind of biases. And I know we can never be without our biases, but I think as sort of like a north star, knowing what's true out there and sort of being aligned with that truth and always chasing that, I think it's sort of just having the right model of the world, right? So knowing that your models could be wrong, and always knowing that the aspiration is to have as true of a model. Although I believe you can never know the true
Hmm.
reality, but you can always approximate with a finer and finer control.
Hmm.
So knowing what's true is just means that as a background for taking good decisions, you have to know what's true. But having said that, truth automatically doesn't let you, it doesn't speak to you in terms of what is a good decision.
Hmm.
There is no normativity in the world,
Hmm.
right? You really have to choose
Hmm.
between multiple decisions on your own. So doing what's right is just a reminder that the truth itself will not tell you what to do.
Right.
You have to just pick something that is right to you, and then right, I mean, it just means, I mean, there's a lot of potential for double clicking on truth and what's
What's
right,
right? Absolutely.
because you're not then just a sample
Right.
out of just I mean, you are a sample out of a population,
Right.
but
Right.
you
Right.
have like an
Your
opportunity
own. Yeah.
to define your own self.
Yeah. It's super interesting. The your journey of being a startup founder, doing very well, building a startup and getting it to both a revenue and outcome scale, and then starting a research lab. What is going on? It's very unusual. And I go read your blog, and it it's a lot of um, a lot of the two taglines right now to think about know what's true and do what's right. And across many dimensions, I see you thinking about cognitive biases, about like, in what's right, like, talking about Gita versus like how it compares contrast to how you think about what's right. I see like, trying to model what living things do, what is evolution, what is the substrate, how is intelligence bootstrapped, the state of AI right now, like where things should be or where things could go wrong, gradual disempowerment. I see all these themes, which uh, highlight a very eclectic thinker. So, can you say a little bit about your journey of being a startup founder to now like starting a research lab for doing AI? Like, what is going on?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, we were talking about your journey has been reverse from
That's right.
research to a startup founder,
Right.
but I'm sure you'll relate to it. I think if you have a curious disposition,
Hmm.
I don't think you can bottle it.
Right.
So it just manifests it in just different shapes at different stages of one's life.
Hmm.
And that's happened to me also.
Hmm.
And before I mean, before I was doing startups, trying to do startups in my college, even before that, I was just super interested into how the world worked,
Hmm.
both at the level of the universe and also at the level of intelligence. So in
Mm.
my high school, I was reading a lot of cosmology,
Mm.
and I had read like Brief History of Time just
Mhm.
so many times. I wrote emails to Stephen Hawking, never replied. I
Mm.
cooked up my own naive theories about why universe is expanding.
Mm.
I was making neural networks in Visual Basic 6.0, trying to play tic-tac-toe. All of that in high school.
Mhm.
And in engineering days also, I think startups was also like a manifestation of the same curiosity,
Mhm.
which is really what does it take to build something of value.
Mhm.
It was just a different question, and I just kept trying and trying again. And I thought I was a reasonably intelligent person, and yet all my startups were failing,
Mm.
were not working out. So that just fueled more and more curiosity, and eventually it led to
Mm.
Wingify. And I'm pretty sure Wingify would not have worked. I had tried again, just pure out of curiosity.
Mm.
And um, I sort of plateaued in my excitement about startups and companies once that initial phase is
Mm.
over.
Mm.
And after that, so I think my nature is that once something becomes very repeatable, I just sort of just get bored of it because
Right.
my drive is of learning and hunger.
Right.
So when those new bits stop coming
Yeah.
towards my end, that would enrich my mental model of what's true, what's reality.
Right.
It just I have to drag myself to do something, and that led to just exiting my company, selling
Right.
it to private equity, and yeah. So Lossfunk, what I'm running right now
Yeah.
is an AI lab, but more than an AI lab, it's like a lab. I mean, AI these days just intersects with everything, right?
Everything. Yeah.
So it's just a great excuse to be dabbling in evolution,
Mm.
learning, representations,
Mhm.
AI for science,
Mhm.
biology. So it's just a great excuse for me to be surrounded by very smart people who are
Mm.
curious and hungry. I couldn't have asked for a better thing um, because I mean I felt like there's just literally nothing to prove right now.
Mhm.
So I need to go back to the very core of who
Mhm.
I am, and it's
Mhm.
just I have a very curious disposition.
Mhm. That is super interesting. But you've written a little bit about like AI and possible labor collapse and like what are some possible solutions towards it. So would love to learn your thoughts on AI centralization risks, AI gradual disempowerment risks.
Yeah, I think we're already seeing this at play, especially with the whole the fable mythos thing. And I think yesterday Chinese news reports that even Chinese government may prevent frontier models from getting released. I think that's just the first step in terms of how the um, the hierarchies could get fixed forever, right? I think people don't mind having inequality as long as they see like a gradient of progress,
Right.
because everyone knows that people start from different points of view. But what gives humans hope, and I think that's we are evolved probably that way, that we want things to be more hopeful,
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow to be better than
Mm-hmm.
yesterday, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
But if intelligence starts creating these hierarchies, and I think it's not even a problem right now, where the problem difference between, let's say, what you have in open models and the frontier models probably is, let's say, 6 months behind. But if these frontier models starts getting closed and they have this what they call as recursive improvement,
Mm-hmm.
which really means that you use the current AI models to make even better models,
Mm-hmm.
then I think it just you can just project it forward, right? Which means
Mm-hmm.
that you will be in a situation where um, because countries that are rich, countries that have more GPUs, they make better intelligence, and that cycle just keeps on
Mm-hmm.
concentrating,
Mm-hmm.
and the rest of the world simply just falls behind.
Mm-hmm.
If you use and intelligence is special. I think people say that it's sort of like previous technological revolutions, but I think this time with intelligence, you are automating work itself. So if you're automating work itself, whoever has the frontier intelligence would sort of
Mm-hmm.
will dominate economically and every other way, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could sort of launch, like just imagine how easy for would it be for a country with frontier intelligence to sort of just dominate another country
Mm-hmm.
from a cyber perspective, economic perspective,
Mm-hmm.
strategic perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that would just lead these permanent sort of imbalances.
Mm-hmm.
And is that a world we want? I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
uh, and at the same level, I think at even within the country level, this
Mm-hmm.
whole risk of gradual disempowerment means that people had leverage on the governments, people had leverage on big corporations because um, they physically, I think you had like a similar kind of power, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also from a voting perspective, because labor class contributed so much of tax to the government had to listen to the
Mm-hmm.
labor class.
Mm-hmm.
I think if from a economic contribution point of view, if labor's contribution starts
Mm-hmm.
reducing over a period of time,
Mm-hmm.
then I think it is possible that the really rich people or the really powerful people will simply disconnect,
Mm-hmm.
and more they will be like they'll intermingle between each other,
Mm-hmm.
but they'll have nothing to do with the rest of the world,
Mm-hmm.
and which means that the rest of the world probably will just get enough capital money to sustain but not thrive. So it just seems a little bit dystopian that
Mm-hmm.
if intelligence is not widely spread
Mm-hmm.
and it's in the hands of a few people,
Mm-hmm.
it points to a future where it creates dependence. And you
Mm-hmm.
can see like where you have big corporations talking about heading out maybe universal basic compute,
Mm-hmm.
or even Sam Altman has that, I don't know, like a UBI kind of a
Yeah.
thing. And even if government does UBI, I think it
Mm-hmm.
just creates a kind of sort of a dependence, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think world will be in a better place where intelligence is just
More,
equally shared.
more open. Yeah. This is like 100% exactly the thesis that we are building towards is both the fact that we are worried about concentration of power, both in a few corporations, few countries, and we think the antidote. So, we have this essay where we say that individually we are powerless, but coordinated we are not.
Yeah.
Coordinated, we have the ability to actually create value like together. And I see this like fork in the future where there is one path where if we go, it the agency and power is all concentrated in a few hands. Another world where like agency and power is more distributed. And if you just look at like the distribution of power and agency, it actually each individual actually has more power and agency in this new world. And I think both are equally possible. And it's like, it's the choices that we make as individuals, as society, as governments in this, very important time that actually like creates these two things. There's another thing that happens, I think, in the presence of like, recursive self improvement and AI systems being able to actually build powerful things by themselves. You mentioned people are comfortable that when there is a notion of progress, improvement for themselves. There's also another thing I think people are very sensitive to is oh, like let's say Elon Musk is a trillionaire, but he deserves it because he built SpaceX, he built this other thing. But imagine in 10 years, Elon doesn't have to do a damn thing.
Yeah.
It's his AIs that are doing this thing. And just because he was a trillionaire, he's now a quadrillionaire, like, or something. And where like there's no karma, like
Yeah.
there is no like connection between his action and outcome. There's just like capital feeding these
Yeah. I
machines
mean,
and then,
exactly. I mean, AI is automation of intellectual labor.
right,
And if you can afford to have AI just because you have more money, more capital,
right,
then I think that the linkage between if I work hard, I'll be better off just
right,
breaks off.
right.
It'll be like if I have enough money from inheritance or whatever, or even a lottery,
Yeah,
I'll
right,
just automatically
right.
have a bigger and bigger share of economy,
Yep,
which is weird.
yep,
Which,
yeah,
which I mean, which just means that the world gets stuck at a point in time,
yeah.
and there is no further progress from there.
That's right. So, and it's right now not even just capital. Just imagine you're a rich farmer in Nepal. Like, you didn't get access to the open AI rounds. You didn't get access
Yeah.
to like the figure AI rounds. You're just sitting around like with your capital, which grows at whatever, 5-6%. And like there is a group of Thrive and others who can get 1,000x return on
Yeah.
their thing. And this was also not the situation anywhere like 30 years back. Like companies would go IPO at $100 million valuation. No, they're going IPO at, I don't know,
Trillion.
$2 trillion
Yeah.
valuation. And where is the 10x, 100x, 1,000x in this thing? Like, it's just, So it's not only freezing the current capital, it's freezing the capital intersection elite
Yeah.
class, which I think is
And
like
I think it'll,
crazy.
I mean, it'll make things, I mean, some things scarce, obviously. Like
Right.
if someone can bid to go to your favorite holiday destination $1 million per night,
Mm.
you would not get that chance. So, I mean, in the abstract, it feels like it doesn't matter as long as technology has a deflationary sort
Mhm.
of tendency. It makes
Mhm.
things
Mhm.
cheap, but it only makes things cheap that can be replicable.
Mhm.
But there are a lot of things that if you need access to the top surgeon,
Mhm. Mhm.
you'll be outbid by
Mhm.
people who have anthropic shares.
That's right.
Is that fair? Should that be the case?
Right.
And I think people agreeing. I mean, um, just following up on what you said, people are okay as long as they feel that someone who's affording nice things deserves it. They worked
Right.
hard for it.
Right.
But people get really angry when it
Right.
feels arbitrary.
Yeah, this is one of the things actually Balaji Srinivasan observed. He said, like, people don't feel jealous of a basketball player or a Taylor Swift because they know they can't sing like that. They know they can't put a show like that. They know they can't dunk a ball like that. But they feel very like unsettled when they look at like a manager or some CEO. They look like this guy is just like sitting around bossing people. And now you take that and now you see like, oh, actually, they're not even sitting around bossing people. Their AIs are doing all the
Yeah.
job. So definitely there is that sense of fairness that people are okay with when they know that this person's actually
Yeah.
creating some
And
value.
I think also people have this notion that the government will take care of them.
Right.
But if recent history has to show it's not true, government responds to its own incentive structure, right? And you see in US and many other countries where the rich are more and more influencing the politics.
Right.
The reason inequality is rising because rich are getting richer, they fund these
Right.
campaigns, and so how much power does like an individual have
Right.
where they can say, oh, maybe. So even I think the notion of so-called democracies is fluid.
Right.
Democracy is not like that platonic idea that
Right.
will always work.
Right.
Democracy is that machine in motion
Yeah.
that changes,
Yeah.
and that empirical beast
Yeah.
could be misaligned
Yeah.
even in the. I mean, a lot of these autocrats, they call themselves elected leaders, right?
Right. Right.
It's
Right.
just, I mean, I find
Hitler
it
was
so
an elected
strange.
leader.
Yeah.
So yeah.
They're like getting 99% of the votes and the whole Democratic Republic of North Korea and all
Right.
that. So
Right.
I feel that a lot of people have this false sense of assurance that,
Right.
hey, I live in a democracy,
Right.
things will be fine for me.
Right.
But democracy is just a word we end up using,
Yeah.
may
Yeah.
not just get realized in
Right.
nature.
And I think this is one of the places where, technologies can actually make these things better if they're adopted and scaled correctly. Like, the example being like in a democracy, one of the hard things that happens is like people don't have time and energy to like understand each of the issues and go vote on each issue. So you can never really run a direct democracy. But if each of us had agents which understand our preference and can actually kind of communicate our preferences on a much more fine grained basis. One way I think about kind of information theoretically is how many bits of, democracy do we have, right?
Right.
We elect like one prime minister, one chief minister, maybe like a mayor or something. Like it's basically like a few bits per person per year
Yeah.
at most. But you can actually run, like in the digital world, this sounds retarded. We have a gigabits per second phone.
Yeah.
And now AI can crunch and understand like infinite throughput data. So why are we running a democracy at like 2 bits per second? It's like, the whole primaries in the US, for example, is somebody comes in a horse and brings the votes in a bag and delivers it. Like that's the world they were actually constructed in.
Yeah.
And now the world's very different. So I think on the one side, the same technology that creates these problems, the asymmetric distribution and so on, also creates solutions. And, and we joke that you can't take like, if AI is accelerating this centralization, you can't have a coordination technology which is 200 years old to combat it.
Yeah.
You have to have a coordination technology which is cutting edge, which uses, zero knowledge cryptography and whatever the latest advances in technology are to actually combat it. So I think uh, that's the direction that we are particularly passionate about, is like, how do we take technology and accelerate, particularly AI, AGIS technology, and accelerate coordination. So we're doing a lot of experiments in that thing. You mentioned, me going in the reverse direction from like being a prof to like running, like doing a startup. I think I'm also having a little bit of a step back and actually making Eigen more like a lab.
Okay.
Our name is Eigen Labs, but we just like over the last 2 3 months we've kind of like made it more like a lab where there are many experiments running in parallel,
Okay.
because coordination is one of those things which has to happen in the wild.
Yeah.
Unlike training an AI model, which you can just like cordon off everywhere, get the hell out. I just have the internet data.
Yeah.
I'm going to train this thing. Coordination and incentive
Yeah.
things actually happen in the wild
Yeah.
with experiments. And so we're doing a bunch of
Yeah.
experiments
I'm
with it.
curious. I mean, since you spent time in blockchains,
Yeah.
what do you think went wrong with the whole?
Yeah.
I mean, I know. I mean, I don't want to paint it like with the same broad brush. I
Yeah.
think a lot of good things came out of blockchain, but generally, this whole thing was just dominated by money and
Yeah.
people trying to profit each other, scams, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And what do you think the lessons
I
we could take to
yeah.
implement like this?
I think basically blockchain is was coordination technology initially used for building new kinds of money, right? So Bitcoin was the
Yeah.
biggest experiment. And I think that experiment of blockchain as a new technology for building money, there is not really a need for thousands of like Bitcoins. There's a need for one good Bitcoin. And that
Yeah.
already came up and was built. And I think that I would say is a net positive, because it puts a lot of pressure on governments and other entities not to create hyperinflation and not to create other things, because people have an alternative. It just creates a market for monies, which is a very important thing. And I think the hardest thing there was, so let me do this like just thought experiment. Suppose I come to you and it's 2008 and I tell you, Paras, I have this amazing idea. I'm going to build a global currency.
Yeah.
Okay. And everybody in all the countries are going to use this. You would either think I'm a crackpot, or you would think that I have to run like a World War III
Yeah.
for this to happen. Neither of those things happened.
Yeah.
Satoshi was not a crackpot, and there was no World War III. They just set up the incentive vortex correctly. That somehow, you have Bitcoin, you mine Bitcoin. Initially, you can't sell it. You hold it. You become a proponent. You now have community ownership of this asset. Everybody who owns Bitcoin is now propagating the myth of the Bitcoin. It just started
Yeah.
spreading.
It's a beautiful idea.
It's a crazy, crazy thing. Just witnessing. So when we, earlier before the podcast, we were talking about how a lot of societal problems are stuck in bad
Yeah.
equilibria. And this is a great example of a bad equilibrium. There's no good global digital native currency. And and the solution was to invent this crazy, like self-sustaining economic instrument that internalizes the value in some complicated way.
Yeah.
And it uses speculation to grow and solve these, coordination problems. So I have a lot of blockchains, just like a lot of tech and now a lot of AI, was a speculative mania. And I used to have a kind of like a disdain for speculation till I actually realized that speculation is a financial technology for solving coordination problems.
Okay.
So imagine like the five of us. Like think of like a x-axis is like all the different solutions. Y-axis is how good they are, right? And the normal problem we get into as a society is we're always stuck in some local maximum,
Yeah.
right? You just climb a hill, you're just stuck there because there's no incentive to move out of it. Now, suppose I come and I say, oh my God, imagine this new hill. It's there. How do I move people from this local maximum to like other thing? Because you have to climb down the local maximum in order to climb up like a better global maximum. Why would anybody climb down other than by doing a revolution or killing people or something? And the idea is, oh, actually, by telling you the story about why that other new, like global maximum, this new Bitcoin world is a better world, and getting more and more people to believe in it, and giving them a share of that world, right? Like, oh, I'm going to give you Bitcoin, that world. That if you manifest that world, it's actually like a much better world. You can actually instantiate and create equilibrium shifts in
Yeah.
coordination, and that's exactly what we see. And like, you just, it's just done in a more narrow setting, where you go and say, oh, the SpaceX, we're going to put 1 million people in in Mars, and you're all going to be owners in this thing. It's going to be a $250 economy, whatever,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, there's a term for this now, right? Hyperstition.
Hyperstition. It's hyperstition. And I think speculation is a technology for hyperstition. And one of the things I was just talking earlier with Kunal from our team is, India missed out, a lot of the Indian IT companies missed out on the AI wave.
Yeah.
And part of it is the lack of speculation,
Mm.
because markets that reward speculation, which means they can say, like, oh, I'm going to invest in this thing because in 10 years there's a possibility that it's going to pay off. Markets that can reward speculation actually can solve coordination problems at a time
Yeah.
scale that you can't solve if you don't have
Yeah.
speculation.
I think in some sense, speculation creates such large stakes that then you have to change in order to make that true.
Right, right,
So, because if you don't have stakes, why would you change from your local
right,
minima?
right,
You'll just keep doing what you used to do. But when the stakes keeps on rising,
right.
then you literally have no other choice.
Going back to the question of what went wrong in blockchain. So this is kind of like the reason I actually believe it's still a positive technology. What went wrong is there is a lot of speculation on futures that like don't really exist, or rather, it's not even a positive vision of the future. It's mostly about just zero sum games of, like, who can exit a meme coin faster than
Yeah.
like somebody else will exit it. So those are things I detest like deeply. And the space is rife, or used to be rife with it. Now that the free money is gone out, there are only like a handful of more hardcore people who stick around. I think one of the things that attracted me a lot into blockchains was the subculture inside Ethereum. Ethereum had a subculture of like coordination technology and making credible commitments, trust, verifiability. How do you solve these fundamental problems? That was kind of like the driving value that they all shared. And I share a lot. And one of the things, particularly that among these things that really, really spoke to me was this concept called permissionless innovation or open innovation, which is the idea that as a as an individual, can you, if there is something wrong somewhere in society or in a product or in a protocol, can I just unilaterally make some change, create some value, and take a portion of the value that I create? Systems which are like this are very rare. Like a stock price in a free market is like this.
Yeah.
If it's undervalued, you go and buy it. If it's overvalued, you go and short it. And both of them both
I mean,
correct the
free
market.
economy is also
Free
supposed to be
economies
like
are
that.
supposed to be like that. But you have, like, for example, let's say I had a better recommendation algorithm for Facebook. Unless, Zuck's permission exists, I have no role
Yeah.
in actually making the Facebook's recommendation algorithm better. So the scope or surface area of permissionless innovation in Facebook is very limited because the system is not built to be an open composable system.
Yeah.
It's built to be a closed autocratic system. So, like, when I started the UW Blockchain Lab, like the main thing that we said was most of the commons in the digital world are controlled autocratically.
Mhm.
It's the Twitters, it's the Facebooks, it's the Amazon marketplace, it's the Uber ride sharing system. These are the commons that, on the
Yeah.
markets that we're inhabiting, but they're kind of controlled autocratically. And because there was no mechanism to control it democratically.
Yeah.
Because how do n people come together and govern a Facebook?
I think I've thought about it, and I think sort of it's, let's say, Mastodon never picked up.
Right,
Um, and I was thinking about why is that, because there has been, I think intellectually the charm of decentralization is very strong.
right,
You feel that it should exist, but yet again
Right.
and again you see
Right.
centralization happen. I mean, even in YouTube,
Right.
when it started, it was all indie
Right.
creators, and now you see the top 10 channels are all just brands and
Right.
big music companies and so on and so forth.
Right.
I think, um, I think the problem is that we cannot forget the benefits of centralization,
Yeah.
especially when it comes of it's efficiency of sort of resources, and
Yeah.
it's also the profit motive
Right.
that somebody's got to sort of pay very
Right.
good attention, because I think value creation in the world happens when a lot of things coordinate very well.
Right.
So in terms of, let's say, Twitter and Facebook
Right.
versus Mastodon,
Yeah.
somebody, a central person,
Yeah.
the CEO, the founder, is highly incentivized
Yeah.
to make sure
Yeah.
the users are always happy.
Right.
I think that somewhat breaks down with decentralized
I think this
technologies.
is this has been the situation before blockchains, which can actually allocate ownership rights in these systems. Because I think absolutely agree that when you have a decentralized system where there is no ownership and no value accrual, you're basically down to like tragedy of commons. Because why am I creating? But the going back to the example of Bitcoin, where like all these people who created the value of like, okay, this is going to be this global digital uncontrollable currency, and they all gained a portion of the value. So it's in, at least in our book, the main diff comes from the mechanism to like measure, allocate, and distribute value to the network,
Yeah.
which really didn't exist
But
in.
along with that, don't you think opinion also matters, in the sense of this is what, let's say, the product needs to be? Because there have been experiments in this DAOs,
Right.
and I don't know. I mean, they've not worked out,
No, they have not worked out at
because
all.
like you can't really. I don't know. It's a tragedy of commons where you have an aggregated opinion about something, and
Yeah.
it ends up being a mush instead
Yeah.
of like
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
entrepreneur's opinion where it may be wrong, but it's pointed.
It's pointed and directional. I think absolutely the history of DAOs is littered with a bunch of problems. I think there are really two fundamental things that went wrong with DAOs. One is um, the same problem we were talking about in voting. Most people who are participants in a system don't have time and energy to
Yeah.
understand each issue and participate in it. It's just not possible. But if you replace that with a bunch of agents that can actually go and participate on your behalf, then I think that solves that information bottleneck problem. The second problem with DAOs, where what are these DAOs actually managing? They were only managing blockchain protocols, which were basically just DeFi protocols. How many DeFi protocols can exist in the world? There's a couple of good ones,
Yeah.
right? There's Uniswap and Aave and whatever, right? Like, but that's it. If your digitally programmable union, which is a DAO, can only own a narrow class of assets, which is DeFi protocols. The best DeFi protocols are all DAOs. Always a DAO, Uniswap's a DAO. Like we have these, and they work. But there's not enough of these. It's not possible to build any company in a format where, because the blockchain actually has to own all the assets.
Yeah.
This is one of the things we're doing at Eigen. We're launching a new standard called the Agentic Companies Standard, where you have basically a blockchain or a smart contract. For example, let's say you are like Mr. Beast and you have a YouTube channel. You can actually take your YouTube channel and make the smart contract own your YouTube channel.
Okay.
Make the smart contract own MrBeast.com. These were not possible in existing technologies. But what we do is once you make that possible, now like these programmable objects can actually
Yeah.
own much more complex things. But what all of this doesn't solve is the problem that you laid out, which is the nature of taste.
Yeah.
The way I think we solve it is there are some decisions where you want a lot of differentiated inputs from the edge. For example, if you're updating a privacy policy, you want to make sure to collect inputs from the users. But if you're taking a decision on a design, that should be much more coherent, opinionated, tasteful. So the way you do it is you say, like, hey, I'm going to appoint this agent. The DAO, instead of like each agent kind of like voting on I like this taste or not, everybody comes together and says, this is the agent that I appoint. This agent is going to make this like
Yeah.
call on whatever the taste is. I think just as there is like a bunch of tragedies that come with AI AGI, there's a bunch of superpowers that come with AI AGI. And the bunch of superpowers, one of the most important superpower is like when you delegate authority to something, you can make it entirely verifiable.
Right.
Like you can never constrain a human, you or me, in the same way. We have our own like random ideas. We'll go do another thing. We're influenced by our friends and relatives and family and all this stuff. Whereas an AI, which is trained to say like, I'm only doing this job, and you know the model, you know what its prompts are, you know how it's controlled. It's the most controllable form of intelligence that ever exists. This is one of the things I think the AI alignment people got a little bit backwards. They were very they are, and you know, I'm also somewhat worried about like how do you actually get alignment right. But human systems are horrible alignment devices. Human institutions are. We were just talking about the tragedies of a democracy. You were just
Yeah.
alluding to like how bad democracies can be misaligned with the thing it's supposed to represent.
Yeah.
And so human systems have never been like amazing like alignment instruments. And so I think actually like AI can be
Yeah.
a step function
I
improvement.
think what you're describing sort of like evolution of corporations and stock options in that sense, where you both decentralize economic sort of um, economic outcomes that
Hmm.
they should be like doled out in proportion to value created,
Hmm.
but also in terms of value creation itself could be decentralized. What you're
Right,
saying is permissionless innovation.
right,
And I think you're right, where agents could really, and it's also an interesting research problem in how how do you have a system that can elicit your preferences, your
right,
knowledge, your taste
right,
with minimal sort of effort but maximal output.
right,
Like same information theory,
right,
right?
right, 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 right,
Principles, right? How can you,
right,
because people are limited in terms of the time and attention they can give to a
right,
topic.
right,
But could you have like an agent that's perfectly designed that
right,
I'll just take 5 minutes of your day,
right.
but I'll extract as much
Yeah,
as I can
yeah,
for creating value on your behalf
right,
and delivering that value back to you?
right,
That'll be a great future if it happens.
right,
I think that's better than UBI if it's possible,
right,
right? Where I'm
right,
using my taste,
right,
my knowledge, my preferences
right,
to shape a future, and the incentive for me shaping the future is that I get a piece of that future back
right,
for me.
right. Yeah, I think that is something that we're very excited about. So when you think about like agents running companies, which I think, you know, as you mentioned, this is really like an evolution that we are thinking about. But you know, a lot of the AI labs are also, of course, thinking of agents running companies. And Sam Altman's like top three things he's interested in. So like number one is agents running companies. I think the main thing that we can uniquely solve here, or crypto and blockchains and coordination technology can uniquely solve, is when you have a, let's say an agent creates a company. Now, that company, if I have to take that company to IPO, what is actually happening is you're creating this social, legal, reputational trust around this company has this balance sheet, this company has these board of directors, this company has these legal liabilities, they actually own the website that they claim that they're owning. All these things, verifying it comes through this IPO process, which costs several $1 million a year. So when an IPO process costs several $1 million a year, you can't IPO a company which is making $10,000 a year.
Yeah.
So whereas if the entire thing is just a software stack, the capital is software, governance is software, execution is agents, which are software, property ownership is all digital and software, then you can verify this stack at nearly $0 a year.
Yeah.
So just like YouTube made it possible for anybody to create video, you don't need to have a broadcast license to create
Yeah.
and broadcast a video because it became software.
Yeah.
If companies become software, it collapses the cost of creation and many more people can
Yeah. I
invest
think
and
it's
participate in
in
that.
some sense it's like I mean these are vehicles for value creation in the world, and it's like a bet on what version of the future you want. I was thinking just like you were describing that if a lot of intellectual labor will be done by AIs,
Mm,
I think the role of humans could sort of evolve towards having an opinion on
mm,
what version of the future do they want.
mm.
And these value creation agents or companies, whatever, are just creating this value.
Right. I'd be a super interesting world. It intersects with some of your writing on, uh, you know, verifiability and confounding. So I would love to take the topic there. You had this 2 by 2 graph on what is scarce or what is hard
Yeah.
when agents can do a lot of work. And I think maybe like you can highlight this 2 by 2.
Yeah. So I was thinking about what
I
gets
the
automated first.
right, right.
Yeah, and this 2 by 2 came naturally to me. On one axis, you have the ease of verifiability,
Hmm.
um, uh, which means, for example, at the low end, um, let's say if you have to verify something in the physical world, you have to actually have a robot move its arm to see whether
Hmm.
it's moved from X to Y
Hmm.
position. There's just so many rollouts can you do. Each rollout is expensive,
Hmm.
even though it's completely deterministic.
Hmm.
But it's per rollout is expensive to get an answer.
Right.
But in software math, per rollout is just near zero.
Yeah.
But the other axis is also how many confounding factors are there.
That was very interesting. It was a very unusual access. So we've in this PostAGI podcast, we've interviewed a lot of economists and so on, and many conversations we've had around cost of verifiability, like Alex Emas. We had many people talk about this, but you know, uh, I love the idea of like causality and confounding as an important principle. Can you speak to it a little bit? How you even came up with this act because it's very unnatural.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking about what would it take for an AI to take my job as an entrepreneur. And it also relates to the fact that we keep talking about taste. I mean, taste just means that if there's so many confounding factors,
Mm,
you you have to make a judgment as an entrepreneur. I mean,
mm,
this is like there's law, there's customers, there's your employees. This is like a
mm,
thousand variables that
mhm,
can impact an outcome,
mhm,
and the link between your effort and outcome becomes weaker and weaker the more confounding factors are
mm,
there. I
mm,
think a lot of real world problems are like that.
mm,
So in that sense, AI cannot be magical, right?
mm,
AI, if AI makes a decision and something else comes around that it never predicted,
mm,
then the linkage between its
mm,
effort and outcomes is sort of
mm,
decreases, and that's why I feel things where there is less confounding factors, which is
mm,
like a closed system. Math
mm,
is like that, games are like that,
mm,
software is like that. It
mm,
compiles, doesn't compile.
mhm,
They're getting automated first, but there's real world things like operating a
mhm,
company,
mhm,
running a YouTube channel,
mhm,
lot of, or even like having a good stream of tweets,
mhm,
whether they work or not. I think there's so many confounding factors.
mhm,
It's very hard to automate that.
mhm,
And it's not hard to automate because AIs are not good enough. It's
mhm.
because the world is not predictable.
Yeah.
So even with humans, when we try to write a book or make a movie or start a company, we have very less causal control on the outcome
Mhm.
because the world is just
Yeah.
inherently complex.
Yep.
And we can feel assured that those domains will not got automated.
Mm.
But also, as a human, you also have very less leverage there, right?
Right. Right. Right.
It's
I was
I
gonna.
mean, in all practical senses, luck of random draw.
Right.
So who cares if it doesn't get automated?
Right.
You just don't have any sort of
Right.
predictable leverage on
Right.
outcomes there.
Right. It's a very interesting axis, this confounding and causal control. I think about this a lot. I think it's one of the things that uh, you know, at least AI models aren't yet really good at, like, with world models and other things. People are starting to approach this, but causality is actually like one of the hardest, like philosophical and related question. As you think about like know what's true, right? Like what's true is what's causally true. Like that's really what's the true thing, and it's really hard to get at it. The the thing that you mentioned, like a lot of entrepreneurs who are very good know how to balance these, myriad number of factors. And that's why so they say intuition, taste, whatever, like some judgment, something. And the uh, the axis there of, for example, can you have an agent whose output value function in like a agent company, for example, the output value function is that it actually um like the stock price, token price, whatever, of this company is a value function. And by running like millions of these small companies, maybe they're all worth thousands of dollars, but it runs like thousands of these and then learns which of these actually work. So That's a direction I'm kind of like pretty curious where that
Yeah,
would
I mean,
go.
I also wanted to build like an AI entrepreneur
Right,
where it'll just like do these rollouts in the real world.
right.
Although per rollout, the information gained will be pretty
Pretty
less.
minimal.
But
Yeah.
if you can do this like a
A
million
million
times,
times, exactly. And I think one of the things that when you're running a company, you are not just you don't want to just optimize for immediate profit. You want to optimize for eventual profit. And so the RL lag between your action and outcome
yeah,
is in years, right?
yeah,
Like 3, 4, 5 years for many startups to become profitable. So you just have this, and so that time cannot be magically wished away,
yeah,
whether you're an AI or something else. So, but I think having an earlier, shorter lag value function like valuation or price or something that can actually be a forward indicator is super interesting.